Richard Skipper celebrates. Every show is a celebration. Richard Skipper celebrates the best in entertainment. Each show, Richard delivers the artists you love, showcasing what makes them unique. Never gossipy. The antidote to a sometimes hectic world. Now, here's your host, Richard Skipper.
Happy Friday, everyone, and listen to the sirens as they pass my house. It's a Friday night in New York, so definitely we're going to hear sirens. I want to thank you all for being here tonight. For those of you who are here for the first time, welcome aboard. My show is all about celebrating life, celebrating art, celebrating artists, celebrating great dancers, choreographers. I also like to celebrate an organization that I am very proud to be a part of, and that's Dancers Over 40. And we're going to talk a little bit about that a little later on. But tonight, our very special guest is a dancer. She is a choreographer. She is a teacher. She is an actress. She is a coach. She is a mom. I put those in that order, but I'm going to reverse that and always put mom at the front of that list because our moms mean the world to us. And Sharon, I am so thrilled, first of all, that you are here this evening, sitting in front of a Dancers Over 40 banner.
Yes, I am. I'm delighted to be here, Richard. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. As I said in my introduction, I'm all about celebrating, and I want to know, what are you celebrating right now?
Life in general, hoping that we all get back to a somewhat normal way of life after the really terrible year and a half we've all had. And deep breath, but don't get too complacent because there's still COVID out there. So be careful. Wear that mask whenever you can and don't think you don't need it anymore. You do. That's what I'm celebrating.
It's still in the wings. So everyone, mask up and stay safe.
That's it, exactly.
I want to ask you, since you bring up COVID in the past, you know, everyone who's watching, we've all gone through this together. As a dear friend of mine says, we're all in this together, but we're not in the same boat. I want to know, what did your calendar look like? I know that you're very active, very busy. What did your calendar look like on March 12th of last year when everything shut down?
Well, the funny part of that is that I taught my last class the actual day before on a Sunday. I was in the school teaching, doing my Pilates and then my ballet class. And I just turned to everybody and said, I don't know what's going to happen. We might have to close down. We're not sure. So let's have a fantastic class today. And at least we can go out and we'll be the last ones to be able to use the studio and dance. And next day, everything closed. So the calendar looked very bleak for a while. And I tried to get out as much as I could because I didn't want to be a hermit. I tried to go places and do things where I could. I had that mask on my face the entire time. I must have worn a mask continuously for almost a year. So I got through it fairly well. I have friends who were hiding most of the time, but I chose not to. And I stayed absolutely safe until this year, after I'd had my first shot, and then I got COVID.
No, I had no idea.
It was very frustrating. I don't know how or why, but my husband's nephew got it at the same time, and he's still in the hospital.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I am too.
We're sending healing thoughts his way tonight. Everyone's watching. We're sending healing thoughts.
So that's what we're doing. But we tried to get out as much as we possibly can, and it didn't bite us till everybody was getting better. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden it hit us. But I mean, that's life. So you do what you do and you get better and you quarantine yourself and you don't like it, but you do it and you stay. If they tell you 2 weeks, you stay 2.5 to 3 just to make sure you're okay. Go get yourself tested right away, make sure everything is fine. And that's what I did. So,
and that's a PSA right there. Thank you for that.
It was a tough time. It was a tough time.
Well, Sharon, I want to talk about your life path. You even have a one-woman show that you do, How I Got From There to Here, and which I love. I love the title of the show. But one of the things that I love and admire about you so much is, you know, some people, they reach the end of their dance careers and they retire, and that's okay. But you kept going. And you also have taken what you've learned over the years and you are imparting it to the next generation. And arts and education is something that's very, very important to me. I want to ask you, and I'm going to ask a question that you definitely don't have an answer to, but can you imagine your life without dance and music in it?
No, because I've been dancing since I'm a little girl. I came from the theatrical background. My dad was a concert pianist, child prodigy, who went and worked for the WPA and then became a film editor at Republic Studios, then wrote a movie that he had actually made. And it was very exciting. My mom danced in several movies. She was in Waterloo Bridge. She was in I Was an Adventuress. She was in On Your Toes, choreographed by Lichine, and a dancer there. So it came very naturally to me to be around, and I was dancing around the house to Peter and the Wolf, and my mother took me to a rhythm class because I'm so old that they didn't really have toddler classes at the time. So I went to a rhythm class, and my mother knew the teacher, and at the end of the class, the teacher said to my mom, "Don't take this wrong, but please take her out of this class." And my mother said, "Why? Was she misbehaving?" And the teacher said, "No, she just knows too much and she's too little at 4. And she was trying to direct the class and telling people they weren't keeping the rhythm right and they shouldn't be using those instruments. And you know, the timing was wrong and it didn't sound right. So you got to take her out because I can't have it in my class that she's the teacher." That's very bossy. Mm-hmm. And born a teacher, which is something I've been doing on and off, mostly on, since I'm 14. So,
wow. So that teaching was always there. So do you think if you had not taken the path that you had taken, that you would have become a teacher earlier in your life?
Well, I don't think I could have been one much earlier than 14. And I happen to like performing. Mm-hmm. So I've done that whenever possible. I did work at Radio City Music Hall. I came out to New York from
we're going to get there in a few minutes. I don't want to get there too soon because I mean, your introduction to Radio City Music Hall is an amazing story that I really want to devote some time to. But growing up in the household that you grew up in, with your father in the business and your mother in the business, what are your earliest memories of each of their respective careers and the work that they were doing? Obviously, you grew up in a household with music, but when were you first aware, your earliest memories of your parents and the importance of what they were bringing to the arts?
I was an only child, so I was included in almost everything that they did. And I was a very mature child because when you're the only child, they outnumber you. So you learn how to be a grown-up really fast if you want to participate. I was not a whining little kid who screamed and carried on and threw my silverware on the floor. I was the kid who wanted to go to the restaurant and have Welsh rarebit. I loved it. You know, it was just that was me. So I knew what they were doing. I knew what they were all about. They told me about their careers. I got to celebrate their careers with them. My dad used to take me to Republic Studios, and they put on their Christmas show, and I would watch Roy Rogers perform with Trigger and Count, and, you know, I love that. And my mother took classes still, but didn't do the performing. Later on, when she was a retired person and I was already grown up and married, she started teaching again in California. So it came, my dad had, unfortunately, a heart attack at 47 and left us. And that was the biggest loss to the movies and to me and to everybody. It was a tragedy in my life. But we always had, even if we didn't have a lot of food, even if we didn't have beautiful furniture, we ate out once a week, and we would sit down and pore over the newspaper when the Ballet Russe or Ballet Theater came to town, and we would choose. The Royal Ballet was coming. Do you want to see Myra Shearer? Do you want to see Margot Fonteyn? What do you want to see? That's what my life was like. It was a very grown-up life. And I got to go places. They knew people in Hollywood. So the writers would all get together and have a brunch or, something like that. And I was very lucky. I got to go. And one time I went to a writer's house. Her name was Salka Firchel. She and her brother, I believe, lost most of their family in the Holocaust. And she used to have like open house all the time. And I remember going there and being allowed to go there because I never opened my mouth. I just opened my eyes and I watched and I listened. And I had to use the ladies' room. So I opened the door to go somewhere. And there's this woman standing there staring at me with her eyes popped out of her head. She looked at about 10, 12 seconds. She stared at me and then slammed the door. And I was like so upset. Did I do something? Turns out it was Greta Garbo. And
she wanted to be alone.
She wanted to be alone, and looking at a little child under the age of 8 or 9 was not something she was prepared to do. So that's one of my little Hollywood stories. But I had a great time growing up out there, and I had fabulous teachers who taught me the ropes and how to dance and how to perform and how to be a good human being. And I think how to give back, which is one of the reasons my last teacher, David Lichine, asked me to teach when I was 14. Gave me a class to teach, and one of the first classes he gave me was an adult ballet and exercise class because he didn't want to do it. He hated doing that. So he let me teach. And I was teaching, Meta Rosenberg, who was James Garner's agent. I was teaching Joan Benny, Jack Benny's daughter. I was teaching Hollywood people. I was 14 years old and I could handle the class. And I loved doing it. I thought it was great to do that. So, that was that. And afterward, I came to New York, loaded with letters of recommendation from all my teachers. And I went to Ballet Russe and I auditioned and I got a scholarship.
That's amazing. But I want to ask you, most of us grow up in households where our parents go off to work and it's a job. Did you feel that your parents were going off to a job, or did you feel that because they were in the arts, that they were play acting, they were having fun with what they were doing? Where did you fit in on the spectrum of what you were thinking about your parents and what they were doing at that time?
I thought my dad was having a ball because he worked as a film editor and I got to go. I got to see him work. He'd take me there sometimes on the weekend and I get to come home with little, strips of film. I thought this was so exciting. And then he wrote a movie. So I got to go and visit and I got to meet, I want to meet Tony Curtis. I have a real bad crush on him. And he took me to meet Tony Curtis filming a movie. And I got to do stuff like that. My mother was managing me. That was her goal in life. When she found out I wanted to be a dancer, she was guiding me and she was there for me. She did not work at that point in her life at all. She did what most women did in the late 40s and very early 50s. They took care of the house and, they didn't have a conventional type of marriage. She wasn't standing there looking like Donna Reed with heels and a little shirtwaist dress and an apron. They were very much equals. They discussed. We watched good television shows. We had a set right away. My favorite was Sid Caesar's Your Show of Shows. That was my favorite television show. So I was always part of the family. It wasn't them and me. It was us.
I love that. That's absolutely wonderful. Well, Sharon, obviously, you did not have a conventional childhood. Let's just start there.
Yes.
So you're teaching when you're 14 years old. But what was the deciding moment or factor in which you said, I want to be a professional dancer?
I'd already decided that at 6. I just did my whole life. Dance came first. You're invited to a birthday party on a Saturday. Sorry, I can't go. I have dance class. You know, you're asked to, and it wasn't a sacrifice. It wasn't like, oh, Mom, I want to go to the birthday party. I just automatically said, I have class. I'm sorry, I'm not available on Saturday. This was my goal because my teachers and my mother had said, you want to do this, you have to do this 100%, more than 100%. And you have to want to do it that way. Not just you have to take class, but you want to go to class rather than the birthday party. This is what you wanted to do. I have to admit, I wasn't that close with my peers because I was always, you know, later on leaving school, jumping on the bus, trying to do my scratchy homework on the bus, going to class. In the summertime, I took morning classes and then I took evening classes. You know, I was always dancing. That's what I wanted to do. That was my choice.
Well, I want to ask you a question. I mean, you obviously had this incredible work ethic and discipline at early age. Now, as a teacher,
yes,
you find that a lot of students still have that same work ethic that you had at that time?
No.
No. Okay.
No, hardly ever, I should say. Hardly ever.
Hardly ever. Why do you think that that is now missing? And how do you deal with it, knowing that that work ethic is not as strong within today's students as it was at the time that you were pursuing it? And was it a hunger that you had for performing?
It was just a hunger for dance and ballet in particular. That's what I was trying to do. And nowadays, it's too much on everybody's plate. When I was taking dance class, I was going to school and I was taking dance class. Now, they're taking dance class, they're going to school, they belong to the after school this, they're performing in the school play, they're taking, you know, they're in the French club, oh yes, and they're taking soccer, and they're playing volleyball, and they're doing softball, and they're running in from sport to take a class, and they're going to be late, and oh, I have to leave early today, I have, you know, a game. So too much, so hate to be corny, but jack of all trades, master of none, and once in a while you get someone who dances a very important thing to them once in a while. And those people are a joy to teach because they really want to be there and they really want to learn and they really want to improve. And they don't think that they're losing something if they're going to be normal kids, you know, that's what they want. And dance is not a priority. That was my life. It's not theirs. You know,
I don't know what it's like now, but when I came to New York in 1979, there were dancers who sang. There were dancers who moved, there were singers who moved well. And sometimes you didn't necessarily have to be a triple threat in the sense that you have to be now. You talked about the fact that so many different areas are being placed on these kids now. Do you think that today's directors, producers, and the powers that be in today's theater scene are asking too much of our students?
I think they're asking what they need to. Everything is based on tricks and the extreme. There's extreme sports, there's extreme dance as well. And at that time, when you were doing dance when I was growing up, the majority of the people took ballet, or they took jazz, or they took tap. Now they take everything and they have to take everything. The only thing that you must take is ballet because it prepares you for everything else. But at that time, things didn't blend as much. So that's why it was difficult for me when I needed to learn tap. I had to learn it on the fly, so to speak. Now, also, now I feel, to answer your question, I think most of the dancers are going to be pretty much crippled and waiting in line to get knee replacement, hip replacement, ankle replacement, and everything else replaced because they have abused their bodies doing higher, faster, more. Everything has to be more. You don't even get looked at unless you can do 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 pirouettes turning. No one even looks at you. And before it used to be a nice triple was good. And now they want every single thing, and it's very difficult.
Wow. Now I want to hear about how you made it to New York. How did the move from California to New York happen for you?
We discussed that it was time that I needed, because at that time also you didn't think about college. You thought about getting your career going by the time you were 18. And so you really had to prepare and be ready early. So my mother took me to New York. Dad stayed in California. Mom took me to New York, and we sort of sublet apartments around as long as we could. And I went to Ballet Russe, and I got my scholarship. And then down the road, a friend said, "Hey, I'm going to audition for Radio City. You want to come?" And I said, "I don't want to dance there. No, I have no interest in that at all." "Oh, come on. It'll be fun, and it's a good experience." I said, "You're probably right there. Okay, I'll go with you." So I went, and they used to have open auditions every Tuesday, and there's about 50 girls in the room, not auditioning for Rockettes, just ballet. And lo and behold, they gave everything I was good at. Little fast jump combinations, learn this step quickly, do turns, fouetté turns, right and left, piqué turns quickly, and chaînés across the floor. Everything I could do really well, they gave. In the corner was this older lady who never said a word, and the dance captain and assistant director were running the audition. And they kept telling people, "Thank you very much," and letting them go and letting them go. All of a sudden, I look around, I'm the last man standing. And they came over and asked me if I wanted the job. Of course, the young lady that asked me to go with her never spoke to me again. And
I was going to ask, what happened to the relationship?
Oh, it killed it. It totally killed it. And I said, "I'm really sorry, but I thought about, do I want to dance at Radio City Music Hall in the Court of Ballet? Or do I want to stand up and waitress at Schraff's? Or do I want to go to Woolworths or Newberry's and stand behind the counter? Balance that. I think I'll go dance." So I joined it, and then no one had come into that company for a long time. It was full of people that the two ballet companies were either going or had gone. And another ballet company, Joffrey, hadn't started yet. And Lichine had just decided that New York City Ballet now needed all dancers 5'8" and 5'9", which, since I'm 5'3", didn't do much for my sense. So I said, right now, the only place to dance is Radio City. And my first show there was the most fantastic thing. They played the orchestra on stage, which was Porgy and Bess. And then the orchestra rolled down into the pit as the elevators came up from the basement. And it was the end of the Porgy and Bess overture, and the ballet rose from the depths of the hall to do a very classical pink chiffon ballet. And I said, "This isn't bad at all. Not at all." Of course, 2 shows later, I had a parasol in my hand, and we were doing the Brazil show, and I was supposed to do cartwheels, which I did very badly. So it didn't stay great all the time, but it was a beautiful beginning. The finale, we were dressed like showgirls. We came up on the center elevator with the turntable and went around in showgirl outfits while they played the theme from The Apartment and Marjorie Morningstar. You can see how much this meant to me, because we are talking 1960, and I remember it like it was yesterday. Wow. And it was so much fun. It was so much fun. And the hall was a great place to work. I mean, you learned so much there. One of the main things you learned was how to dance big. And how to dance, the stage was broken up into X's and O's. And the first and third lines were the X's, and the O's were the second and fourth. And you learned discipline. You learned that you don't do tiny little steps. You do big steps to get across that stage. And you learned fast, and you did what you were told. And it was an experience. I found it was a very positive experience. I liked it.
That's amazing. And how many shows a week did you do?
Well, it was 4 shows a day times 7. You work 7 days all of the time. You worked a month, and then you were off for a week, which was really only 5 days because you had to come back for rehearsal.
And what did you do on your days off? Did you sleep the whole time?
My mom kind of didn't let me do that. We all had to do something else, like clean and things like that.
Okay.
But there was also, you could also work, instead of working 4 weeks, you would be working maybe 6 to 8 weeks, and then you might get 2 weeks off, in which case you got an actual full week plus 5, and then you came back for rehearsal. And we had the cute little anecdote is, all the girls had to know what time rehearsal was, which happened every Wednesday. And many of them lived in Kansas and in Maine and Massachusetts and New Jersey and Connecticut. And they would call in on Sunday night, a person-to-person call to themselves. So if I were to call in, whoever answered the phone is like, "I'd like to speak to Sharon, please." "Oh, I'm sorry, she isn't in. She won't be back until Wednesday at 10 o'clock. And that's how you knew when your call was without having to pay the money that it costs to make a long distance call. So that's how we all lived at that time. It was a whole different era than it is now.
Oh my God. I mean, you got the sirens now that I had a few moments ago.
Yes, I have them. Yes, you must be further uptown or further down.
No, I'm in Rockland County, so it takes a little while to get to
Midtown. Okay,
but I want to ask you, going back to that period, and and I also am very dear friends with Rosie Navalino-Merns, yes, who was very much a part of this as well. What was the biggest impact that this has had on you as both an artist and as a human being outside of the arts?
I learned a lot, as I said. I enjoyed even going to the shows after I left the hall, and I would go to see them sometimes. I didn't go near it for years, and afterward I started going again. So that was a positive thing. I got hooked on Broadway musicals, which turned out I loved, and wound up choreographing some dinner theaters and community theaters, things like that. And that was a great experience, and that turned me on to it. So I loved it. I absolutely loved it. A negative thing?
Nothing negative. It's all positive.
No, it was just hard work. It was hard work. When you're working 7 straight days times 4 weeks, that's a lot of time to never be able to breathe.
And how long did you stay with Radio City Music Hall?
Radio City, just 2 years. Mostly because I met my future husband. He was a manager out front. And I left when 5 months pregnant.
Oh, well, so that's the reason.
That's what I was doing. I had my wedding shower and my baby shower at the music hall. They threw me that. And the bosses were not very happy with me because they wanted me to stay. But I decided to go on.
Sharon, I mean, obviously, you've told us from the very beginning that you have this incredible work ethic. How were you able to balance being a mom with the work ethic that you had in terms of pursuing a career?
Because I just had it. I always had it. That was me. I instilled it in my children, both of whom have the same work ethic. Both of whom would go from far and away to get to work in the middle of a snowstorm, when somebody else who lived next door would call in and say, "Oh, I can't go out in that." We just all were like that. I'm still like that. I had to miss a week because of COVID. I have never missed teaching in my life. A week? Never. I was in the hospital once for a couple of days, and I had to be actually in the hospital in order not to go and work. So it's just not part of my DNA. I have to be available, ready, and contributing all the time. I don't like to be sick. I don't do sick. It's just not my thing. So,
That's wonderful.
Positively, that was a great place to work. It really was.
Well, after becoming a mom, how long after becoming a mom did you go back to work?
I went back to work about 5 years later. I'm sorry, about 6 actually, when I took my daughter and signed her up at the local dancing school and said, "You know what? I need class," and went back to take class too. And after a short time, I wound up assisting the owner of the school in her class. She said, you're not paying for classes anymore. You're such a help. And then she offered me a class to co-teach. And then she offered me classes to do. And then a couple more years down the road, she said, I'm closing this school and I'd like you to buy it and take it over if you're interested. And I did. And then I had my own school for 20 years. So I've been working, and you just did what you have to do, and everybody stayed with you. My daughter grew up a brilliant dancer, didn't do it as a career because she's an animal person and she worked there. But she was a brilliant student and a beautiful teacher, and was commanding a class of terrible teenagers when she was younger than all of them, and they respected her highly. So she did a good job too. And everybody did.
She followed in your footsteps, also being
To
young.
a point, but with the work ethic. She was a very good dancer. She would have made a brilliant performer, but she worked for North Shore Animal League and
God bless her.
you know, and ran their programs for a while, you know, their events, and started Senior for Seniors to get senior people to adopt senior pets instead of asking somebody 79 years old to take a puppy that needs to be trained. She would see that they got the 6 or 7-year-old dog that was a couch potato, who was perfect for the seniors. So she was quite responsible for doing some very positive things. It was wonderful, really wonderful. And then I had another life too, because I sold antiques for a long time. I was in the antique toy and
I want to talk about this. You ran 2 businesses
Yes, I did.
at the same time.
Yes, I did.
You are doing a dance.
Yes.
You're teaching the dance, and you have this antique store.
Yes.
And you know, my husband, before we met, also ran an antique store in Nyack, and you're constantly searching for merchandise.
Yes.
So, how you're a mom?
Yes.
You're teaching. You've
Yes.
got an antique store.
Yes.
Sharon, what's the secret?
Well, I did shows every weekend too. Don't forget that too. So I was out of town somewhere, or doing in Manhattan the flea market. You know, I was in the garage for a while and across the street. And I would go to Maryland and do a doll show, and I would go to Pennsylvania and I would do toy shows. I was always on the road. I once again worked 7 days a week. And I was fortunate enough to be mostly in my 40s, 50s, early 60s. I was young enough to handle it. And I was still performing and still choreographing and still doing dinner theater and da-da-da-da-da. And, you know, all of that came to be all at the same time. And the more you do, the more you can do. You know, you have to ask somebody who is very busy to do something for you. Never the person who's sitting at home going, oh, I have no time whatsoever to do anything. No, you just do it. And when you're out doing a show on the road somewhere, you visit the local shops. When you're not doing the show, and you go to auctions and you buy privately, and, you know, people bring things into your store. I mean, it was just constant, but very rewarding, and I enjoyed it, and I made a hassle of friends.
Now, there's another layer to this multifaceted onion that you live, and that's being on the road. Being on the road takes an incredible discipline as well.
Yes.
Did you enjoy being on the road?
Well, I don't do it anymore. My son, after my husband died, which he did in 2009 of lung cancer.
I'm sorry.
He used to be the transport I don't drive. So he used to be the on the road person. After he died, my son lost his business at the same time. So he became my assistant and drove us everywhere. And he was doing his own antiquing and looking for things, because he used to own his own bar. And he started to sell on eBay, and he was selling bar memorabilia and doing very nicely with it. And until he got a job a couple of years ago, we were doing things on the road. And then once he got the job, he couldn't take me anymore. So I haven't really I've done mostly private since then. But the whole life it's exciting.
Well, it sounds exciting. I want to be you for a day. That's my goal. But I want to ask you, also with everything else, I mean, being a choreographer, it takes an incredible discipline as well. When you were brought in to choreograph a classic show, a show that is so well known, how much flexibility do you have in terms of the creativity of what you're able to bring? Or are you really trying to replicate what the original choreographer did?
I used to replicate a style. I never replicated steps. I might pick a signature step so that you knew exactly what you were going to see. But basically, I've always choreographed my own thing.
Mm-hmm.
That was how I worked. I did Gypsy, I did Guys and Dolls, I did Sweet Charity, and I also performed in them. So I was able to have my handle on everything. And it was so much fun. I love to choreograph. Love it.
Now, I've got another photograph that I want to share here, and that's going to bring us to the work that you've done over the past few years with Dancers Over 40. Now,
Yes.
here you are with our wonderful friend, John Safakis, receiving the Legacy Award.
Yes.
And I was there that night. So can you tell everyone who's watching a little bit about what Dancers Over 40 is all about, and from your perspective, and also the importance of receiving the Legacy Award?
I can start with the second part of the question first. John called me one day and said, "Hey, kiddo, you're getting the Legacy Award." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "What do you mean, why?" I said, "I haven't been on Broadway. I'm not a star. I don't have a name. I was used to going and seeing Carol Lawrence and Leroy Reams and you and, all these people that I knew. And I had no idea." And he said, "You're so much a part of this organization and what you bring to it. And you have a different kind of life. Most of the people there are Broadway oriented. I'm one of a few who are from the ballet world. So I brought a new perspective, as you're saying, to the scene. And I can talk about a different part of the entertainment world in the classical ballet sense. And as far as Dancers Over 40, I cannot tell you what it means to people, to me and to everybody else. It's the anchor. It's the place you can call John and have a conversation for an hour, where I'm sure he's rolling his eyes back in his head, but he's listening and to your stories. It's someplace to go and you meet and see your friends that you used to know, used to work with, would dance with, would sing with, perform. And here they all were. They might be using a walker or a cane. They might be hunched over, but they're there and they're enjoying. And Dancers Over 40, except for this last pandemic year, we've always had the Fosse people would be there. The June Taylor dancers and the Rockettes, they were being honored, and there would be a forum, and we would have a talk, and everybody would talk on stage, almost like we're talking now, and tell stories about their life and career. And Michael Bennett, and I'm forgetting people, of course.
Howard Champion. Yes.
Howard Champion, you're right. And the last thing we did, one of the major things, which was David Merrick. I got to meet Anita Gillette, who I had been on Facebook with, and I knew her from Dancers Over 40, but we had a good conversation. I got to meet John Davidson, who was a pussycat and the sweetest thing. And we got to see them doing 42nd Street. And from my studio, one of our students who got into the cast of 42nd Street was up there dancing with them, Doreen Alderman. And I mean, it's such a place where you feel a part of it. And we have meetings, and we have performances, and we have the Legacy Awards. And if you look at the list of Legacy Awards, there's somebody famous, and there's somebody not famous at all. And there's somebody who's been in and around the business for 50 years, and you don't even know who the hell they are. But there they are getting an award. And if you see the light in their eyes and how proud they are, to receive a legacy award while they're still walking, talking, and in some cases dancing. It's so gratifying. And to know that your peers are out there, to know that if you start singing a song, half of them know the lyrics also, probably did the show, probably would join you in a second, you know, saying or dancing or singing a song, and you heard stories. I mean, Anita Gillette told absolutely fantastic stories. It was breathtaking just to see that particular performance. They did a whole Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. They did West Side Story event was there, and just wonderful things, and so many original cast members. And how exciting is that?
It's very exciting, and you know, and the fact
Carol
is
Lawrence on the stage, you know, it's kind of nice.
and everything is filmed thanks to John Safakis, and everything is archived at Lincoln Center. You can become a member of Dancers Over 40. Go online. I've got the address scrolling on the bottom of the screen, and you can go online, and if you're a member, you have access to all of these programs and everything.
That's correct.
And I want to say, I mean, I want to give a shout out to, I think, Dancers Over 40's youngest member, and that's Charles Kirsch.
Yes.
Have you met Charles, or have you worked with Charles?
I have met Charles, and Charles will be doing an interview on Monday on ABC, and Charles will be running a trivia, a second trivia show on Tuesday. That'll be on Zoom and live streaming and things like that. So this organization, can you imagine that this organization became interesting to a 13-year-old boy?
I want to tell you, he keeps me on my I have such admiration for this kid and his parents.
Yes.
And
for allowing him and pushing him into this and getting his back on it so he can do this and not saying, oh, go out and play baseball. This is fabulous that he's growing up in this. I can't wait to see what he turns out to be. Yeah. Absolutely. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be so exciting. I know that.
And you yourself, I mean, how lucky, Sharon, to have parents who treated you as an equal.
That's correct.
In this business. And you've instilled that to your own children. And I'm assuming to the students that you've taught over the years.
I hope so. I hope so. I hope everybody learns something. I have, where I teach, which is Hannah Corner School of Dance in Albertson, who just changed ownership a little while ago. It used to be Carol Riley was the director, and she was a former Rockette. And now Paige Ketsaglu and Danielle Corniagas, I never say her name right, Keneriagas, they own the school now. And I worked for them, and I worked for Carol, and I've always had a good reputation. You know, oh, you want to know how that looks? Go ask Sharon. She'll tell you the truth. She won't sugarcoat it. She'll tell you exactly what's wrong and how to fix it. And they trust me. And I can't think of anything in anybody's life that's better than being trusted.
Amen. Amen to that.
But you know it's going to be okay.
As you know, Sharon, I'm all about celebrating, and I'm going to ask a question, and I don't want names or circumstances that will give away what I'm going for.
Okay.
But I want to know, what was the most difficult patch that you went through artistically in this business, and what was it that got you through that dark patch?
Not being able to join a company when I came to New York. Not to name names, but the company was going under. And the last time they hired 2 people to go into the cast were people who were very lovely, one very lovely dancer and one okay dancer. I was better than her, but she was okay. But their parents were able to make a large donation to the company. My father had just died 2 months previous to this. I didn't have a red nickel to give to anybody. So that was a very disappointing money talks kind of situation where
absolutely,
You don't want to see that. I was always naive enough to think I was going to make this on my merit. I was going to get this job because I was good. And I did at Radio City. But prior to that, I didn't because I didn't have the money. And that to me is always very heartbreaking. And I would have liked a longer performing professional career, but I chose motherhood instead. And I'm not sorry that I did. I don't feel that I sacrificed anything. I have two great children. I adore them both. Smart as anything, wonderful people, kind people who would help you out. And, I can't ask for more than that. Nobody ever went astray. So I credit myself because my husband was working most of the time and I did most of the raising. And he did what he could, but still. And I think that was a difficult time in my life when I wasn't able to pursue the career longer that I really wanted to have, because I did something you don't do as a dancer. I had kids right when my best years should have been, because I had my first kid at 20 and my second kid at 23, and that's when your highlight days should be. And I didn't have it anymore.
I'm a firm believer that things unfold as they are meant to unfold.
I believe it too.
I truly believe that. And I want to ask you, from the time that you came to New York,
yes,
and the business has changed a lot since you got here. What are some of the major changes that have happened in the business that you think are for the good? And what are some of the major changes that you feel are not so good? And going back to that early period in your life, what aspect of that world do you miss the most?
I miss the simplicity of it. I miss the simplicity of they're having an audition, you go to the audition, they say yes or no, maybe you have to come back one more time and you're either hired or you're not. And that was it. And now it's you're coming back and you're coming back and you're coming back, or you're being, dismissed because you're 5'3" instead of 5'9". You're being dismissed because your hair is dark instead of blonde. It's all these things that have nothing to do with the quality of your dance, but it's, these typecasting things. I'm not crazy about that now. I like the easier time of it then. I think they put the people, it's harder to get into the union now. I mean, you get a job at Radio City when I got one, and the first day you walk in the door, the union guy is standing in the green room ready to sign you up because, and this is what it's going to cost you to sign it. And, the first 3 or 4 paychecks, I can't even tell you what we made at the time, would make everybody now go, oh my God, you worked for that? We made $75 a week. Take home pay, $67.50. And out of that, you had to take some of it, $25, I think, for like 3 or 4 weeks to pay your union dues. And, you did that and you didn't think anything of it. Now you have to work so many shows. It has to be under this, that, or this guidance or that guidance. And finally, after you put in your time, then you can get your, it's like, I'm getting my equity card. And you go, hey, you've done 4 or 5 Broadway shows. What do you mean you're getting your equity card? They don't get it right away. It's like they have to apprentice forever. In some cases, unless you're somebody who's hired all the time, it's going to take you a while to get that union card. So I think as far as show business, as far as ballet companies, as far as Broadway is concerned, I think it's harder now, just as the rest of life is harder now. Everything is harder now. Everything is more complicated. Everything has more red tape. Everything has all these things. It's exhausting. It is very exhausting. And I'm almost glad that I was at the time I was. I didn't have to.
I certainly am. I will tell you that. I certainly am. I'm glad I came to New York when I came to New York.
Yeah.
I'm glad that I was able to experience the last vestiges of what it was like to go to a theater
Yeah.
that were people dressed to go to the theater.
Yes.
And they weren't drinking and eating popcorn and
Yes.
sodas and spilling it all over you.
Yes.
And everything.
Radio City has more concession stands than they ever did. And if I remember correctly, if you bought something at a concession stand, and I believe they did not sell popcorn then because it was greasy and they didn't want it on anything, you were not allowed to take it back to your seat. You had to eat it in the lobby.
Let me ask you a question about that, because Radio City Music Hall also was very famous for the films that they showed there. Was that allowed during the films that they showed there?
I don't know whether people were allowed to sneak in a candy bar, but you couldn't do, as far as I know, there was no messy soda and no messy popcorn, at least while I was there. And, you know, it was something that you respected the theater. And if you couldn't go into a place for a couple of hours without chowing down, really? You know, you have to eat. You know, you take a subway ride and somebody is sitting there with food in their bag. I mean, you can't go from here to there without eating. I mean, you're not going to fade away. Really, you're not. And there was more respect for other people. There was more respect for yourself and where you were. And you didn't see anybody in front of you in Bermuda shorts and a ripped T-shirt scratching their chest, and they're sitting in a Broadway theater watching a musical, and you look at, I find it sickening.
I do too.
They still sort of dress, most of the people, for a ballet. There's still some respect for the classics. And
I have a trivia question for you. Do you know the first show that relaxed the dress codes in the theater?
No.
It was Les Mis.
Was it?
It was Les Mis, and it was because they were playing to the tourist trade. And a lot of people would go, you know, would be tourists in New York City for the day, and then they would go to the TKTS booth and get tickets, and they wouldn't have time to go back to their hotel room and dress for the theater. And that's when everything began to get, sloppy. That was the right word. Now, I'm going to go back to Dancers Over 40 for a moment. And while I am telling everyone who's watching, I know you've got a little piece of merchandise that you can put on.
I do.
So, and we're actually going to give away a prize here. And, you know, I've been, keeping tabs on who's been leaving comments tonight. And I hope that he's still here. But he was the 7th person to leave a comment tonight. And because he was the 7th person, and today is the 7th, Glenn Charlo is getting a Dancers Over 40 hat, which we're giving away. So Glenn, if you're still here, you know, you're getting the hat. It may not be the same hat that Sharon's wearing, because this may be Sharon's hat.
Well, I will be getting my own hat. I don't know whether this is it, but I think they're really cute. And
you can buy a Dancers Over 40 hat by going to dancersover40@aol.com and getting this. Now, before we sign off tonight, we're going to play a little game. I have some questions that are not necessarily directed at you. They are just questions that people send to me, and they're generic, but I'm going to direct it towards you. The first question is, what's the biggest surprise that you've ever had in your career?
Being chosen to do a little solo piece at Radio City Music Hall, and then it wound up I couldn't do it. I did something. What did I do? Oh, I know what I did. I was supposed to do, we had like All Nations kind of thing, and I was supposed to be it was a kind of a comedic Spanish dancer, and I do comedy very well. I love it. And I went off on vacation from doing the French show with the can-can that I was called back for like 40 times. And I got sick. And I went to the doctor and I said, oh my God, I have the flu or I'm pregnant. And he looked at me and he said, you have the flu and you're pregnant. And by the time I was able to get over the flu and get back to work, the show was almost over. So that was a very large disappointment. That I can say.
I can't even imagine. And what is the worst physical harm that you have ever experienced as a dancer?
Nothing. I was so fortunate. I sat on my ankle once and it hurt. And basically, nothing. I have been really lucky. People look at me and they just, I can't stand you. Look at you. No knee replacement, no hip replacement, no ankle this, no surgeries of any kind. There's no knee brace on you. You have nothing. And I said, I don't know how to be sick. I don't know how to be injured. So God was very good to me and didn't allow much of that to happen because he knew I couldn't handle it well.
That's wonderful. And what is the truest prediction that you have ever made or heard?
A sad one, actually. Leaving California, train pulling out of the station. We were going on the Union Pacific to Chicago, first leg, and then the 20th Century to New York. And I'm waving to my dad out the window, and this horrid thought passes through my head, I'm never going to see him again. And that's something that has stayed with me my entire life. And I don't think I will ever get over it because it was so clear. I just looked at the man and I'm blowing him kisses and waving at him. And just this horrible thought, and I will never see this man again. And I couldn't deal with it. I couldn't even deal with it.
Wow.
That was a hard one.
Well, that gets me.
That's a bitter pat. That's a bitter pat. I know. I adored him. You might guess that.
What is your favorite perfume or scent?
Magritte by Carvan, old time green and white striped box. And I loved it. And I can never get it online. They never have it. That's
wow. Is it still something that's still created or not?
Supposedly. And it's made in France and it's listed on the, perfume.com website. It's listed, but it's always out of stock.
Well, send me the link. I'm going to try to find it for you. And what is your greatest moment on stage?
Oh, my goodness. I would say it would have to be a combination. It would be when I was doing recitals for my dancing school. And my daughter and I would always do a comedic number towards the end of the show, which nobody saw. And they would all gather in the wings to watch us. And we did Hit the Road Jack once. We did How Could You Believe Me When I Said I Loved You When You Know I've Been
a liar on my life.
And we did we did the other Fred Astaire, Judy Garland thing from I forget even which Easter Parade. A couple of swells. Yes, I did that, and we just did something. Oh, we did the Blues Brothers, which was the last one we did, and it was so good. And I have most of the videos of this, and they were good. Mm-hmm. We did, lip syncing and dancing. And again, I would take the flavor of the number, but I wouldn't choreograph it exactly. And for How Could You Believe Me When I Said, etc., I actually had to lay in a supply of straw hats because I had to break one of them down over my daughter's head at the very end. And I had to practice it a couple of times. So that was so much fun. Dancing with her was probably the thing I enjoyed the most.
That's great. Well, Sharon, I want to tell you, I have had so much fun tonight. We planned this ages ago, and then things got in the way, and life got in the way, and then you got COVID and all these things. So thank you for being here tonight. Everyone, please, you don't have to be a dancer. I'm not a dancer, and I am a member of Dancers Over 40. So please subscribe if you can, or give the subscription as a gift. I will tell you, if you know of a kid who is a dancer or someone who wants to go into the theater, there's not a greater gift that you can give here. And I am going to do something I'm first thing in the morning that I have not done in forever. I'm taking a vacation. I am going away for 7 days, so I will not be doing any of these programs. Please, though, check out the ones that I've already done. I want to thank you all for being here tonight. If this is your first time here, my hope is that you will subscribe to Richard Skipper Celebrates. My show is all about celebrating artists and their body of worth. And there are over 250 interviews prior to this one. And we've got some great interviews coming up. I told you before we went live tonight, I just booked Leslie Ann Warren today. We're going to be celebrating her birthday next month. So please subscribe and click on the bell, and you'll get a reminder whenever I am going live with all the future shows. If you like tonight's show, please hit the like button, leave a comment, and share with your friends, because that helps. Thank you. That helps with the analytics of this show.
Don't forget to get your hat.
And don't forget to get your Dancers Over 40 hat. And Glenn, I will tell you how you can get yours. And I always end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Go to your Facebook friends list, and the seventh name that pops up, reach out with a phone call. Not an email message, not a text message, not a private inbox message, but a phone call. And let that person know what they mean in your life. None of us know what tomorrow holds. So please, please, please reach out to those that matter in your life. As my dear friend David Friedman says, and I mentioned this earlier, we're all in this together, but we're not in the same boat. And you never know what someone else is going through. That's but true. If you're going to be in a boat, make sure you bring a skipper along. So I'm going to actually leave the screen, and I'm going to give you the final word. Anything that you want to say about anything that we talked about tonight that you want to expound upon, anything that we didn't talk about that you wish that we had, or just any message that you want to put out to everyone who's watching right now. And before I say goodnight to you, Sharon, thank you, John Safakis, for making this happen tonight, and for all that you do for Dancers Over 40. And John, I should sit down with you one night. Let's make that happen. So, Sharon, thank you for the gifts you've given. Love you. Thank you for having me, Richard. It was great fun. I enjoyed myself, and I want to make a shout out to John Safakis also for allowing me to raid his wardrobe and supplying this lovely necklace and this wonderful jacket, because I didn't come with anything that he would allow me to go on camera with. So I really enjoyed that. This has been a pleasure. We covered a lot of things. I was having a great time, and I was just very happy to be here. So next time, see some of you on Sunday for dance class. Don't forget to come. Take care, everybody.